Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Kaam Kahani, a podcast for the career curious. Today we have with us an international public speaking coach, Nausheen Chen. We'll talk to her about her Kaam Kahani and find out what she does and how she got here. Hi Nausheen, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Haris, for having me.
It's a pleasure. We're very curious what you do and what your Kaam Kahani looks like. So just to start things off, you weren't always an international public speaking coach.
No.
You weren't. So could you just sort of briefly take us through the journey thus far?
Sure. I started off in the corporate world. I was at Procter & Gamble for many years doing marketing and PR. While I was there, I actually got trained as a communication skills trainer. Ended up training a lot of people over the years, and that was very close to my heart, but I never realized that that could be my calling in life. I just continued doing the PR and the marketing work. Then I had a lovely late quarter life crisis at 27. Incidentally, that's when we met around that time, and I was exploring a lot of things. Theater, stand-up comedy, improv. At one point, I was co-producing, co-directing, and acting in a crappy little comedy segment on ARY. And
you had your own improv class as well, right?
My own improv club. We were an improv club that met twice a month, and we did a lot of improv games.
The acting wheel, right?
Great memory, yeah. And that's when I stumbled into filmmaking. Went to New York to study film, and I was a filmmaker for 7 years in China. That's when I started my first business, was an entrepreneur for the first time. I had no idea what I was doing.
Wait, how did you get to China? Like all of a sudden you went to the US to study
Yes.
filmmaking. I mean, the whole thing is a long process, and you were a Fulbright scholar too, right?
Yes.
So you got a Fulbright scholarship. That took you to the US where you studied filmmaking.
Yeah.
And then you completed that, and then you went to China.
My husband and I were in New York, and we didn't know where to go next. We didn't necessarily want to come back to Pakistan. We wanted to keep exploring. We didn't really have a home. And my father-in-law at the time was based in China, and he said, "Kids, come to China. It's great here. You're going to love it." And we were like, okay, why not? So 2015, we headed to China, and then it was supposed to be actually for just 2 years. And it became 7, because once you start your own business, the years fly by like weeks.
Wow. And so you were in China for 7 years
Yes.
being a filmmaker.
Yeah.
So how was that? Like, did you enjoy that? I mean, because you're clearly not a filmmaker anymore. So what changed, and why did you switch lanes?
I enjoyed some of it. I did not enjoy the marketing part. I didn't enjoy having to come up with scripts for commercials. So I was a commercial filmmaker, and I worked with Chinese companies who wanted to create commercials for the West, for the US and European markets. And it was great. I enjoyed working with people. Some of my favorite memories are working with different CEOs who are speaking on camera for the first time, and they sound stiff or robotic. They sound like a pale version of themselves. So I ended up coaching them at the time without even knowing that I was coaching them. I ended up coaching them on how to be more relaxed, how to be more themselves, how to make impact when they spoke. And that led me to realize that what I do enjoy is working with people in front of the camera or when they're performing to get the best performance out of them. It was all the other stuff that I didn't necessarily enjoy.
Oh, so you stumbled upon your sort of calling. Mm-hmm. And then so you coached a few people, they were helped, they liked it. Did they give you good feedback? Is that how it sort of, you got encouraged?
They gave me great feedback, but more than that, the videos that we ended up creating, so these were CEOs who were creating a little story segment in their corporate documentary or in their Kickstarter video. There's a founder who's sitting there talking about his product and how he created it and what his vision is. And those videos went on to then create these multi-million-dollar campaigns, because these were crowdfunding videos and they raised millions of dollars. So that in itself was proof that what we did worked, that you were able to show this person's story on camera and do justice to it.
But a lot of, so you primarily, so now, then you became a public speaking coach, and we'll talk about that. But you primarily used to work with CEOs and sort of high level executives. Aren't those people already good at public speaking, like to begin with? I mean, they speak to a lot of people, they're like leaders, and one would think that they, whenever they go into a room, they command that room, everyone listens to them, they have town halls and whatnot. So, I mean, those are the people that are already good at speaking, are they not?
There's something very surprising that I realized. There is a difference between this person, the CEO, talking to their team, and there's a difference when they show up on camera in front of unknown global audiences. I also worked in PR simultaneously for a while. It overlapped with the filmmaking work, and I saw parallels there where we placed CEOs on interviews with Bloomberg, on the BBC, on TechCrunch, and similar things happened. These were folks that were dynamic and engaging when they talked to their teams because it was a familiar environment. It was an environment where their credibility wasn't under doubt or questioned. They didn't have to prove themselves. So they felt psychologically safe in the space where they're talking to their team, their company, their leadership. But when they were lifted from that environment and placed in this new environment, when they're speaking to journalists or when they're just speaking to a camera and they don't know how many people are going to be watching this, that puts some kind of fear and block for them. And they need to find themselves again. They need to recreate the same presence that they have with their teams in front of the camera. It's not a straightforward linear process.
Wow. So when did you decide to become how did you even know that this profession existed and that you could become a coach, and how did that idea occur to you, and how did you then proceed to materialize it?
I didn't actually know that this profession existed at all. All I knew was that I was unhappy with being a filmmaker. I never felt like a filmmaker because I had stumbled into it. It was never my dream.
But you studied it.
I studied it because I wanted to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. I wanted to see what I could do with this. But it was never my dream. It was never a passion for me to make films. So I would talk about this and complain and grumble, especially to my husband from time to time. One of those times happened in 2022 where I had a talk with my husband and I was telling him the same stuff. Oh, I don't feel like a filmmaker. I don't enjoy the work that I do. I don't even make great commercials. And he said, Nausheen, you've been speaking on stages ever since I've known you. You've gone out of your way to go and speak at all kinds of events, from neighborhood coffee shop storytelling events to doing workshops to doing improv on stage to comedy. And you've never thought about making a career out of that. That's clearly your passion. Why don't you figure out how to make a living off of it? And my first response to him was...
Easier said than done.
My first response was, okay, who's going to pay me to speak on stage? I'm no one. I'm not Tony Robbins. So how can I make a living off of this? And he said, don't be so quick to disqualify the idea. At least aim to figure it out. So
I feel like he should be a coach too.
He really is. He does coach me a lot. And that's when I started posting on LinkedIn, because it was, again, an exploratory exercise to see, what can I actually do? Can I do something that's going to build my brand? And I had this vague idea that it could result in business, but I didn't really understand how the whole world of creating an online presence and creating an online business worked. I had
So
no
what
idea.
did you start posting on LinkedIn? Like, what was your angle?
Anything and everything. In the beginning, for the first 5 months,
Or just started being more present on it?
I started being more present. I started posting every day. So that was my promise to myself. Back in March 2022, I told myself, I'm going to just start posting every single day while still taking on film projects and still doing a 9-to-5 PR job at the time. And LinkedIn became my third job that I ended up dedicating more and more time to, because I started getting great feedback from the community, especially when I started talking about public speaking. It seemed to really have hit a nerve with a lot of people. It seems to really be a challenge and a struggle for a lot of people. So I started talking about public speaking, then I started making videos about public speaking. I got attention from not just potential clients, but also LinkedIn themselves. They approached me to create these LinkedIn learning courses on public speaking. And 6 months, roughly 6 months into it, I got people asking me, how do I work with you? Without me ever saying that I'm looking for clients. So that was a sign. There were a lot of green flags, a lot of signs along the way.
So you didn't start off by labeling yourself as a coach. It was just,
yes,
it was the demand which sort of
yes,
prompted you to become one.
yeah. And then another 6 months later, I quit everything and I went all in on public speaking coaching.
So you seem to be like really good at dropping everything, quitting, and then moving on to something really exciting. Like, how do you do that? Like, seriously, you drop everything and then you start afresh, and then you end up doing really well. Like, so what's the secret to once you drop everything, fine, but how do you start afresh and make sure that it works?
But I don't make sure that it works. No one knows. You can't predict the future. You can just pick a direction and commit to it and see how long it serves you. That's where I picked the corporate world. And after a few years, I realized I was unhappy. It wasn't resonating with me. Then I picked the filmmaking and the creative world. And something stuck with me, like improv, which I started 15 years ago, and I still do improv from time to time. I ended up doing improv in multiple countries, multiple stages, but filmmaking itself didn't stick. So it's about trying different things. And I would say that I was lost for a very long time. I was very much a wandering soul for a very long time.
Okay, so people started asking, how do we work with you? Like, how do we get services? What did you do then? Like, you started calling yourself a coach, or did you like do this? Did you have to do a course yourself? Did you have to get some training for this?
Yes, I enrolled myself immediately in a course. I'm a big believer in not just qualifications, but also training. I love being taught. I was always the nerd in class. I love studying. I love homework. I love teachers. It's the weirdest thing to say, but now I can say it with pride. And I immediately enrolled myself in a coaching program that I've now finished, and I will hopefully get my ICF accreditation soon. The other thing that's
the International Coaching Federation,
yes.
I guess, yeah.
So the other interesting thing about public speaking coaching is that it's not like life coaching. There is a lot of teaching and mentoring involved, not just coaching. So the difference between training, mentoring, teaching, and coaching is that coaching is all about working with the client to lead them towards specific solutions instead of giving them solutions. But in public speaking coaching, there is an element of training. So I have very specific frameworks that I've created based on my 17 years of experience speaking on all of these random stages, and some not so random. I also ended up doing 3 TEDx talks. So I have these frameworks and tools that I teach as part of the coaching program, and there is a coaching component that works with the client to help them implement these tools and to gain inner confidence and inner self-belief.
Wow. So, Nausheen, tell me something. So, public speaking is a very niche sort of offering. Public speaking coaching is a very niche offering, and you stumbled upon it, or you sort of came into it because you knew that you had always been good at speaking, right? So, does that mean that people who are good at other things in their lives, for example, I have a great posture, so I can become a posture coach, or I am great at, I can become an image consultant, for example. I'm great at, I wear great clothes, I have a great sense of style, I can become is that how it works, or is that really sort of really diminishing it?
Yes and no. A lot of people have natural talent. The question is really about what makes an artist, for example. Is it talent, or can you learn to be an artist? The answer is yes, you can absolutely learn.
And how do you think that what you're good at is big enough or is enough of an offering to sort of sustain you.
Right. I actually did this ikigai exercise. Are you familiar with the Japanese concept of ikigai?
Sure, where people where you think about what you can do, what the world needs. Is
Yes,
that it?
it's
Yeah.
the intersection of four things, I believe. So it's what you're good at, what you could be paid for, what there is demand for, and what is good for the world. That's the fourth one that I see sometimes and I don't see at other times. But if you can find an intersection between what you're truly, really good at, what you can get paid for, and what there is market demand for, that is your ikigai. And if you're not good at something, then you can get good at it too. That's where the response is for your initial question.
First,
about
we have to
talent.
get really good at something and then sort of start exploring whether this is something that I can get paid for, or can we do this simultaneously? Like, keep exploring as well as trying to get better at what you're offering.
You can do it simultaneously for sure. There is this theory that the best clients that you can get are folks that are not 10 steps behind you, but 2 steps behind you. And this also works from the client's point of view. If I want to seek mentorship from Tony Robbins, for example, he's so far ahead of me, or Simon Sinek, or Mel Robbins. They're so far ahead of me that they may not be able to identify with me anymore. I might not be able to relate to them anymore. But I can seek mentorship from someone who's 3 steps ahead of me. It's more fresh for them, the journey where I am, where they are, and I can see myself in them. I can feel like it's more realistic of a target if I can achieve what they've achieved. So you can absolutely do it simultaneously.
Did you have trouble with imposter syndrome, for example? I mean, did you ever think that, hey, I mean, who am I to coach somebody about public speaking? I mean, I don't have a PhD in public speaking, or any other thought, right? Any other sort of self dismissing thought?
The first thought that I had when my husband talked about it was the imposter syndrome, where I said, well, who am I? Why would anyone pay to speak to me or to have me speak on a stage? So absolutely, I had the imposter syndrome for the longest time. It's really my clients and the work that I do with them and the results that I see that reassures me and gives me that great positive proof that I have learned a lot of things along the way, and B, I can teach them. I can coach folks and I can get them from point A to point B to point C.
And are most of your customers or clients like sort of recurring clients, or are they there just for like an event that's about to happen, or are they there for like, I just want to be good in the long run?
Yeah, surprisingly, a lot of my clients want to improve and level up their speaking. I do get a smaller number who come to me for very specific events and keynotes, but I would say a majority are interested in improving their overall speaking skills because they're doing podcasts all the time. They're doing webinars all the time. They're delivering presentations to senior management all the time. So for them, it's about upgrading their overall communication skills, articulation skills, speaking and presentation skills.
And you also have to talk to them about their fears, maybe, things that, something which sort of overlaps with therapy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because when it comes to public speaking, there are 2 components. There's the outer component, so your body language, your voice, intonations, pauses, your energy, things that you can learn, things that you can perform. And it's absolutely possible to fake confidence by doing certain things a certain way. People will never know what you're actually thinking inside. And I know because I did that for the longest time. When I started speaking on stages when I was 19 or 20, I didn't have self-belief. I didn't have self-confidence. I faked it. I somehow learned to fake it. And that's the one thing I never want my clients to do. So I always have that flip side of the coin, that inner confidence that should back your outer confidence. So I always work on those 2 levels. So not only do I teach them the frameworks and the tools, but I also go deeper and I work with them on what is it that's making you so anxious or nervous before you speak? How do you feel before, during, and after your presentation?
And how are you able to address that? If I'm scared of, if I'm just scared of being judged in front of a crowd, and I had a bad experience in childhood, for example, and that's what's stopping me from being a good speaker, how can a public speaking coach help me with that?
You ease the person in. So I had a client who had been traumatized like that multiple times. He had frozen up in networking calls. He just went blank. He couldn't think of the next thing to say, and he felt traumatized. He felt like he let himself down. And then he went to a Toastmasters meeting and felt even more traumatized because he was then put on under the spotlight, and he did not enjoy that at all because he tried shock therapy for himself, I believe, something of that sort. And then when we started working together, we eased him into it in the sense of starting small. So first just doing speaking exercises and role plays between the two of us, and then going on to doing very short calls with strangers. He had an element of this fear that he had of speaking to strangers and not being able to articulate what he really wanted to articulate. So there was even an exercise that I did where I had a fellow coach join us on a call, someone that he had never met, but he and I had practiced his intro. So he knew the story he wanted to tell, and he just had to tell it to a stranger, and that was the exercise. We did that for about 15, 20 minutes, and after that, he felt transformed. He felt like, okay, if I can tell the story not just to Nausheen, but also person X, who I've never met before, I can tell this to person Y. I can tell this to 5 people. And that unlocked something in him. I did a similar exercise with someone who felt very rusty when he was booking these keynotes, and he hadn't spoken on stages since university. And he didn't have an anxiety or he didn't have a stage fright issue, but he felt very rusty and he felt very stiff and robotic. So before he was going to fly off and do these international keynotes, we found these small storytelling open mics in his city. And I had him practice his origin story, and I told him, you just have to go and perform this in front of this group of people. And he didn't like the exercise, but it absolutely worked. He felt less rusty. He felt like, okay, I can talk to 20 people, which means I can talk to 200. I can talk to 2,000. It's the same. So easing people into these unfamiliar situations has really helped.
So you have a niche now, but does public speaking coaching pay you enough compared to like a full-time job that you used to have, or maybe even filmmaking?
This is such an interesting question because a lot of people hesitate before quitting their 9-to-5 jobs and becoming entrepreneurs. And this is the second time around that I'm doing it. And what I can tell you is that when you're an entrepreneur, there's no limit to how much you can earn. It's all about your own creativity, your own hustle, how quick you are to adapt to the market, how quick you are to understand who is your real target audience, who is your ideal client, who do you want to speak to, how are you going to get to them with your message, how are you going to establish your credibility and your authority. And this has been proven over and over again that if you can be super creative and innovative and really adapt to the market, there's no limit. You could earn millions in a year, and people do it absolutely all the time.
So the answer is like, you're all set. I mean, if you can sort of crack the market, if you can sort of identify the trends, if you can give the people what they want, and if you're consistent with that, then you can potentially make, like you said, the sky's the limit.
I wouldn't just say it's about identify and following trends. It's about understanding what people really need. What is it that can be what we call a painkiller solution versus a vitamin? If you give people a vitamin, they may come back, they may not. Vitamin is good to have. A painkiller is what you need right now. It's urgent. It kills pain. So if you can position your services, if you can find services to offer that really address an urgent pain, then you don't need to follow a trend. You can create your own In fact, you should, because you want to stand out. You don't just want to be person X who's offering the same services as 20 other people. You want to address the solution to the problem, but in your own way.
You're based out of France, right? And you work completely remotely. All your clients are on a computer screen, and you're not with them. How does that? Is that? Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy working remotely as opposed to like meeting clients face to face? Because you're the sort of person who does enjoy meeting people. I know that, right? So how does the remote work sit with you?
The best part about remote work is that it opens doors. You no longer have to be restricted to a specific area, specific geography. So for me, that's invaluable, because when I was based in China, I was doing filmmaking work that was so deeply connected to what was around me. You needed to go and film in locations close to you.
It was completely local.
It was very local. You needed to find clients close to you. So for me, that was in a way very restrictive, because I couldn't even travel for too long. I had to always come back. So that is the one thing that I find absolutely amazing about being able to work remotely.
And I guess that's what lets you be an international public speaking coach as opposed to just like a French public speaking coach.
Your friendly neighborhood speaking coach.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, by the way, did you ever coach people in French?
Yes, I have. I have several French clients, even though their talks are all in English, but I did have one French client who wanted to give a keynote in French, and we did a lot of the coaching process in French and English.
So Nausheen, this was great. This was amazing, and what a journey you've had so far. What is next? Where do you see yourself in the coming sort of few years?
I want to keep building my authority as a public speaking coach. So I'm already writing a book. It's going to take a while, but my aim is to document 17 years of being on stage, being in front of and behind the camera, and showing people what I've figured out in terms of this magic framework of becoming a stronger speaker. So a book is in the works. A PhD might be on the cards. And in the immediate term, to make sure that I'm also creating courses and creating different kinds of products and offers. Because right now, the one thing I do is one-on-one coaching, which is not very scalable. I can only coach so many people in a week, in a month. But if I create a course out of it, then a lot more people can get access to it at more reasonable price points. So those are some of the immediate and longer term goals.
A PhD and creating digital courses. So, I mean, nothing too ambitious, right? Nausheen, it was such a pleasure having this chat with you. Thank you so much for being on Kaam Kahani. And I wish you the best of luck. Have a safe flight back home.
Thank you so much, Harris. It was great being here.
Thanks. Thank you for watching Kaam Kahani. Till next time, see you with another Kaam Kahani.